So, I have some thoughts and some statistics and some ideas to share with you about some of the psychosocial changes going on in our world right now due to COVID. And then I certainly want to hear from you all. If you have noticed certain changes as well, I would like to ask you to be willing to open up about some of the psychological and social changes you've seen. And finally, I do want to talk a little bit about this. Not all the changes are things we have to do anything bad. They're bad and we have to do anything about. But there are some that I think we need to make intentional choices about, whether we want to continue or we want to do something different. I think this COVID has provided an opportunity for us to make some choices about how we interact with each other and interact with the world, and how we care for ourselves. And so I want to talk about, as we come closer to the end of tonight, I want to talk some about that, and what are some opportunities here that we might be able to use to change some of our own habits and ways that we look at the world. So, again, if you have a question, what I invite you to do, if you can open up the thing that says participants, and then over on that there should be a little place where you can raise your hand. It should be a green thing. Now, if you can't do that, that's fine. You can also put it in the chat, just to let me know that you would like to say something. If we were all in the room, I'd just kind of let it happen. But unfortunately, in this space, this hybrid space, sometimes it's hard to know if somebody wants to say something. So,
the raised hand is in chat on my. I don't know if it's the same. It may not be the same with different computers.
Well, either raise your hand or raise your green hand or put something in chat. Let me know that you want to speak.
Reverend Tom?
Yes.
Is it possible to increase their volume or?
How is I can increase their volume, yeah. Okay. Y'all can hear me okay though, right?
Yeah, mine is pretty loud.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm turning up your volume. All right. Anyway. I need a chair about this high, but that's not going to work out. Okay.
Want me to put two chairs, one on top of the other?
No, I don't want you to do that. So, I want to start off with a few stories. And let somebody else in here. Okay. So I want to start off with a few stories. On Sunday, after church, a woman that works here also works at a children's hospital. And she was in the maternity ward with some of the nurses. And they were noticing something that they hadn't seen before. The babies, their upper face, their eyelids and their foreheads were very animated, but their lower face was not. This is across the maternity ward. They noticed this. And it's something that people hadn't mentioned to them before, they hadn't been aware of before. And of course, they figured out, people wearing masks, and so the babies are not having modeling. They're not seeing other people use the lower part of their face, so they're not modeling that. And so they had to put together a protocol to help the babies be able to see other people using the lower part of their face, speaking and smiling and using the muscles in the lower part of the face.
Oh, wow.
So
Amazing.
it was something that other people hadn't considered before. And I haven't read anything about it, but this is something that a local maternity ward therapist told me about on Sunday. Now, I don't know how widespread it is. It's very anecdotal, but it is, I think, indicative of something that I have been trying to do, is to begin to notice what some of the psychosocial changes are going on around us. You mind if I'm not going to see you very well, but know that I know you're there. And if you want to, just yell at me or something if you want to speak. Okay. So that's one story. And again, anecdotal, but is it indicative of what we're going to be seeing or what we need to be dealing with? Again, I'm going to just tell a few stories as we get into this. So a few Sundays ago, the first Sunday we opened up to let people come back into our sanctuary. We're all masked, and I'm sorry, all my stories are about church, so you have to. It's just going to be the way it is. It's where I see people, So she came in, and this was again the first Sunday we opened up the church, and she came up to me and put her arms out to give me a big hug, and I pulled back. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't something that I thought I'm not going to hug her or I don't want to touch her, or it's just the only person that I have touched in that way in 16 months or 15 months or whatever was my wife. Nobody else. And so my body just physically reacted against. And she noticed that. I mean, she was aware that I pulled back. And, I think that that we all need some awareness, not only of the things going on around us, but the things going on within us as we begin to re-enter the world post-COVID. And so as I talk about some of these things, if you notice that, oh, I've done that too, or if somebody reached out to shake my hand and I just, I couldn't do it. I was uncomfortable. I don't know, there are so many things going on right now. One last story I want to tell you. I was at Publix, which is a grocery store chain here in town, and I was in line at the back where they sell the cheeses and meats and like a deli counter, and a woman went up to there's another woman behind the counter, a woman in front of the counter, and she began talking about what she needed, and then another person from behind the counter came up and said, you can't touch her. She can't have a sample, and you can't touch her, and we've got to maintain that, and just went on and on and on. How this person who is trying to serve a customer couldn't do all these things. There are all these rules that they had to maintain in order for safety, and just laid into this coworker about being safe, and she started laying back into him, and it was just terrible. I mean, I was ready to leave the store, and that is not an unusual thing. I've seen that kind of interaction between people, unfortunately, all too frequently particularly in the past 6 months, as people have begun to reemerge. People who are not even aware, I don't think, in most cases, of how full up they are with emotions and stress and anxiety, and and that it only takes just a prick and they go off. Not intentionally, not to hurt anybody else's feelings, but just because there is no more room within there for one more stress. And I think a lot of people are carrying that around with them. So we all know that COVID's been around since last March, and that many people have had to isolate. Many people have had to quarantine. They haven't seen their loved ones. They haven't seen other people besides their little pod of people they live with. And it was, what is it? Since we started seeing the vaccine, again, around, January, February, March, we started seeing the vaccine come out, that people began to feel some hope that things were going to begin to change. So all that we accumulated in that in 2020, there was some hope that we could let go of that. We were going to go back to a world that was going to be normal again, and one, that just hasn't been the case and may never be entirely the case. And two, I thought of this period of time where people were beginning to feel hope about the vaccine and beginning to get vaccinated as kind of a, if you think of Advent before Christmas, where people are, they're patient and they see hope coming, and they really see the change coming, and they're able to get through that. And then think again, they're slammed again with the variant. Oh, okay. And all that hope goes out the window. Now, I don't know if you all have experienced this before, but I know I have. That I have have seen the end of something, and I knew it was going to get better and life was going to turn around, and then I got slammed and it didn't happen. And it's just, that can be overwhelming, over and above just dealing with the COVID, that we've had, or the situation that we're facing right now. So we've got the trauma of being isolated, and over and above that, the trauma of being re-traumatized by this Delta variant, and all these, and that things are not getting better. They're better for some, but not for others. People are fighting against getting the vaccine. We're seeing so much happening, and then we're finding out we have to get another shot, and I'm just going to have to, we're going to have to get our second shot or our third shot or whatever it is. So it seems like, it feels for some people like it's never going to get better, and it also makes a lot of people wonder what they're going to do, how they're going to cope. So I'm going to ask a question. How many of you would describe yourself as being traumatized by this time in COVID isolation? I can see you back there. So let me ask, when I say traumatized, what do you think that means? Would anybody be willing to say what that means for them?
For the worst.
Change for the worst, okay. What else? Okay, go ahead, Julia.
I guess being in a state of paranoia.
Okay, state of paranoia. Okay. Anybody else?
I would say trauma implies some. Oh, this is Joel Heine, by the way. Sorry, I was editing a paper. I just got on here.
Okay.
I would say trauma implies something more extreme than what I feel. I guess I just feel annoyed, bothered, is how I would put it. But I think of trauma as being more serious than that.
So what I want to, I'll let Kieran go, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But I wouldn't minimize what might be traumatic to one person. So if it feels traumatizing to you, I wouldn't minimize that. Go ahead, Kieran.
Well, for me, I find myself angry, sad, and that's not normally like me to be sad and angry a lot. And I feel like time is just clicking away, and I don't have much time left on this earth, and this is the way I'm going to have to spend. You know.
I understand that completely. So it becomes for some, and I agree, it is for me as well, an existential angst that goes along with the emotions that are also coming up. How about some of these thoughts? Post-traumatic stress would be described as what you experience after the trauma. Okay, so the characteristics or attributes or behaviors or emotions or what you experience after the trauma. So if we describe COVID time as trauma, what kinds of experiences we have after that would be post-traumatic. So it could be things like anxiety or anger or depression or feelings of hopelessness, thinking, reoccurrence of experiences you had during the trauma, dreaming about it, obsessing about it, feeling, anxiety. This free-floating anxiety might be part of that as well, where you feel your heart beating fast, or your breathing is fast, or you can't seem to get a handle on that feeling. It feels overwhelming. And again, I don't want to judge what feels overwhelming to one person might feel different than what feels overwhelming to another person. But what I do know is I see a lot of people talking to me about anxiety right now. And that anxiety is not easily managed, because a lot of the ways that we used to manage that anxiety are not in our lives right now, or not stable. So say not stable in our lives right now. 1 minute we can wear masks. I mean, we don't have to wear masks, and the next minute we do have to wear masks. 1 minute we've taken our shot and we're good forever. The next minute we have to take another shot. It's not like we can count on how things are going to be. And that's part of what gives us that stability to cope with stress and anxiety. And go ahead, Barbara, you want to say something? Your hand is up. Oh, no.
Yeah, I do. I know exactly what you're talking about. I had lunch with a member of the church today, and she's a single and alone also. And we were talking about exactly this subject and what happens if the vaccine fails, and is this the end? And when we got up to leave, we stopped and we stood and stared at each other's eyes for a long time. And then on a signal only our bodies could hear, we embraced. It's like we gave in to, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But we were so skin hungry, we simply had no choice. We knew it was wrong. We knew we shouldn't do it, but we had to.
Barbara, you've got to take care of yourself. And I wholeheartedly support how you take care of yourself. I mean, I think we're all under so much stress. I was talking with my colleagues, my ministerial colleagues. I've been talking to them throughout COVID, and invariably, the message I get from them is, don't beat yourself up for not functioning at the same level that you functioned at before COVID. Just don't, because what you expect or what other people might expect of you, you're not in the same place. You don't have the same coping skills. Your concentration is off. Your focus is impaired. It's just you're not going to be in the same place. You may not be sleeping as well. Whatever it is. And we said that to each other over and over and over again. Every month we met, and we just gave each other those messages. And we talked about, I messed up. I missed an appointment, or I was doing a sermon and I forgot what I was going to say, or whatever it was. It didn't matter. But we all knew we had to give each other support. We just had to. That was the most important message we could give to each other to get through this. And we continue to do that because we're still not as we were, and we may not be for some time. Okay, I talked a little bit about anxiety. Let's talk a little bit about depression. Some people say, I get depressed over this, what does that mean? What does that look like to people? What does depression look like?
Lack of enthusiasm.
Lack of
enthusiasm.
Lack of enthusiasm. Okay. What else? Well, let me just talk about a few things, and please jump in if you have some other thoughts. But so, like enthusiasm, your energy level may be affected, your sleeping may be affected, your concentration may be affected. You may not even know. It's because we're isolating. One of the characteristics of depression is withdrawal. You withdraw, from other people and other things. So you may not even notice that in yourself. And I don't see the kind of depression where people are immobilized, like paralyzed. But I see a lot of people doing things like not changing their clothes, not taking a shower, not taking care of other personal hygiene, not taking care of the dishes. All these kinds of things we commonly think of as a depressed person would do. We're seeing increasing numbers of people doing that, but not necessarily calling it depression. They're just saying, "Oh, it's just quarantine." I'm not wearing pants because it's quarantine. Whatever it is. But I think again we have to be aware of what changes we're going through, and decide if those changes are indicative of something we have some control over or not. One of the biggest characteristics, one of the things I look for most intensely when I'm looking at depression is whether there is a person is doing something and they can't change it, or they have difficulty changing it, or getting back to where they want to be, or they find themselves struggling to do it and continuing to regress, struggling to do it and continuing to regress. And so those are the kind of things, if you find yourself right now, maybe, getting up and getting dressed every morning and taking a shower and brushing it was something that you did without thinking, and now it seems like it takes effort.
Yes. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I understand completely. That's indicative of some level of depression. It's not to say you have to get medication but I think there's an awareness, and it requires more intentionality to try to help yourself get beyond this behavior. and look for other resources to help you. Whether it be a pal to get, call you and say, did you get up and get dressed this morning? Or did you go out and exercise or take a walk? Sometimes we need a little help to do that. But the inconsistency is something I would look out for right now. I'll tell you a quick story. So when COVID happened, my wife and I each made some decisions about how we were going to cope with it. I increased my meditation. I incorporated some different structures into my prayer and a variety of spiritual practices. She decided that every morning that she was going to get dressed up. I mean, like she was going out. And she has continued to do that every day that we have been in this. She even got some new clothes and she's wearing them and, she's trying out different styles. But for her, that was a way of coping. That was a way of maintaining some consistency as, everything else that was around her seemed to be inconsistent. This is something that she felt she could control, to put off the anxiety and the depression and manage it to some extent. So again, the way we manage this is going to be different from person to person. Does that make sense? Yeah. Another thing I would be looking for as a characteristic that I've seen people doing, and it's sort of what I'm talking about as far as depression is procrastination. Way to go, Martha. Martha's, that's my wife. So let's say that, you have something to get accomplished and again, you put it off and you put it off and you put it off. I would say that should make you stop and think, why am I doing that? What's happening here? Is that unusual? Oh, did somebody say something? So as I'm going through these, what I'm sharing with you are some things that could possibly be changes that you've experienced. And these are things to be aware of. And you're not alone in this. I've seen people and talk to people throughout this time, calling people, and just to check in with them. And I've seen these kind of characteristics across the board. Not everybody has the same thing, but everybody has something that seems to be affecting them in some form or fashion. And I think it's important to be aware of what that is in your life and how you're going to manage it. For a time, I think we're all in that place where it's sort of like, I believe that we have to be taking better care of ourselves than we would do otherwise. If we had been in an accident or we had had an operation or something like that, we would be careful with ourselves. We would take extra care to be sure we didn't re-wound ourselves, or that that if we had an injury that we went to the doctor and took care of it. But this is weird. This is not like that. This came on over time. It's very subtle. And what changes occurred within you and around you are not something that people necessarily would say, oh, that's you're broken, or you have an injury, or you need to go to the doctor and take care of that. What's happening is just happened over time and just drug many of us to a place where, we do have certain symptoms that are unusual for us, that we need to pay attention to. And again, that's another thing we can do, is not take care of ourselves. That's just, we can't not take care of ourselves anymore. We have to take care of ourselves. And because this hasn't ended. And even after it ends, if you had surgery, the next day you're not going to go out and run, a marathon. You're probably going to wait 6 months before you do that. you need to give yourself time to heal and not have the expectation you're going to be as you were, even after COVID has, crested and we're all feeling a little bit better. We're still going to have some symptoms we have to deal with. It's not overwhelming, but it is intentional that we got to pay attention. So how do you think Zoom is affecting people? How is Zoom affecting you? How would you describe Zoom affecting you? Karen, did you want to say something? Yeah.
Well, it's probably saved my life, or it certainly has kept me from getting more depressed because I live alone, have no family around me. And if it hadn't been for Zoom, I would have been so lonely. And I've gotten to know new people. So it's been a real positive thing. Yeah. I mean, although it is weird. Now when I see a person in the flesh, I expect a little box around their head.
I agree with her that it's been positive, but I also think it's been negative in some ways because we're sort of artificially interacting. I'm remembering that news story, that guy that got caught masturbating in the middle of a meeting. Obviously, our attentions are, I've been sitting here editing a paper. That's why I don't have the video on my face, because I didn't want you guys to know that I'm actually only partly engaged in this conversation. And when I meant to come there, but I have this paper to do, which is why I stayed in my office at FIU. But anyway, the point is that we're only partly interacting this way. At least we're interacting, but we're only partly interacting. And a lot of times people's attentions are in other ways divided, like the two examples I gave.
Very true. And Ray, if I can pick on you for a moment, you have had a variety of wonderful educational experiences on Zoom, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. Zoom is, well, first of all, you remember the business with the Zoom bombs. So I have what we named Zoom Bomb, BAUM, which is part of my name. And it's a family Zoom that we have every week. Now, my daughter is here within walking distance of where I live, here in the Crossings. And my son lives just south of Ocala, and he's up there with his two sons. So my son and two grandsons are in the northern group, and we've been doing FaceTime every week as possible, depending. It's got to be modified to the day that one of my grandsons is off, etc. So that's been part of it. But with the Zooms, the Palace was, I'm on their mailing list, and they had a whole series of OLLI, if those of you are not familiar with OLLI, and that's the OSHA learning, lifelong learning. And this was all paid for because of a lot of the people who have have relatives living at the palace could not even visit them. So these things were fantastic. They were so educational. There was everything from an expert on music, which appealed to me. That's been my profession for a long time, and that was a very positive kind of thing. It's not only Zoom. Also, I stream a lot of music on the computer, and mostly classical, but also jazz and Latin music. And I find that it's not elevator music. In other words, it's not background music to me. I'm just involved with that, and I find that is absolutely important. It's been part of my life, and I find that is medicinal, if I can use a metaphor there. And then also humor, which has also been a part of my life, which I think it's hard to do in times of stress. And I don't mean reaching out and trying to be funny. I mean finding the humor in even times where you think it's not there. Sometimes you have to lift a rock, and it's sort of a happy wiggly under there, so it's different. So anyway, and I'm fortunate. My daughter calls me every day, and like I say, she's very close, and she's been very supportive, particularly since my wife died. And I can't believe it's going to be 13 years since my wife died in November. So all in all, I can't say it's been a happy experience as far as COVID is concerned. But anytime I start to get a little, feel sorry for myself, either through an ache and pain or whatever negative comes my way, I empathize with what's going on with people who are so much have so many problems. I mean, just look at the news and listen to the world and see what's going on with Haiti. And I can't imagine being a Haitian going through what they're going through.
Sure.
On top of
Here's the
an earthquake and then a storm, so they can't really help people, and then an assassination. And people, I have friends who are Haitians, survivors. It's just amazing. I've been too long. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I thought you were going off to Haiti, and I didn't want to bring you back to the presentation.
Yeah.
So I think you bring up a couple of really excellent points. One of them is that we are getting a lot of unfiltered information from the news and from other places, and we're not able to necessarily always immediately talk to somebody about that to process it. And that's a different thing. And so we found that a lot of people over this period of time have been, let's say brainwashed is maybe, by certain segments of society. It becomes easier for you're more vulnerable, right? Many people are more vulnerable right now to false narratives, to false information, to different ways of seeing the world that are not accurate. And some people would say that contributed to what happened on January 6th. People are only listening to what they want to listen to or what they get caught up in listening to, and there's not anybody around them to kind of filter that. I want to come back to Zoom for a moment, though, too. Zoom has been both a wonderful thing for a lot of people, and that's great, and it has been for me as well to be able to keep in contact with those I love. But there have been some negative consequences. Can you think of some of the negative consequences of being on Zoom? How has that impacted our empathy, our interaction with other people on Zoom instead of with people in face to face? Anybody? One of the things that I've noticed is that it is harder to know how the other person is feeling when we're on Zoom with them than if we're at face-to-face. We don't have the same cues that we would normally have if we were in the room with the person. We can't tell if they're upset or they're tense or they're the physiological ways that we normally read other people are just not there. And it requires, if we're intentional, that we have to make sure that the communication is getting back and forth accurately. It's not as easy to know. It's like before Zoom, I had this thing with Gmail, where I would say, don't talk about anything important on Gmail, because it's going to be misinterpreted. I'm not going to get all the information. We can't have a discussion on Gmail that is really going to be thought-provoking and useful and productive. We can pass information. I think that's fine. And I think we're seeing some of that with Zoom. We're missing pieces of the conversation. And there's been research to show also that because we're not able to pick up on the cues we would normally pick up on if we were with the person face to face, that is contributing to our brains having to overwork themselves in trying to figure out what's going on. And that's part of what's contributing to Zoom fatigue. Our brains have to work so hard to try to understand what's going on while we're on this media together. Think of that for the kids that are on Zoom at school all day, for people whose work, I have a person in my congregation who normally travels around the world, particularly down to South America, and she works with companies down there, and now it's all on Zoom. It's on 8 hours a day. It's on Zoom. I've been on, and I don't know about you all, but I've been on to conferences. Used to be conferences were a joy to go to. You could see people, and that's fine. I still get to see people, but after a time, I feel myself just getting exhausted. And this is another thing that is a change in our sighting. I don't know how that's going to change. Like tonight, we've got some people here, and we've got a lot of people on Zoom, and people are having to make this kind of transition, and it's impacting all of us. How do we cope with, being on Zoom, trying to understand, trying to read the signals, trying to be productive, and also finding ourselves getting just fatigued and not able to focus. Have some of you all experienced that?
I had the experience last year where I do a lot of my own research in Nepal and other parts of Asia. And I had the experience last year where I was one of the keynote speakers on a conference on Nepal time. So I had to be on Zoom for about a half an hour at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was so incoherent, I said, don't even record it. They did publish the paper. So they took the paper because I had some more time to do that. But 4 o'clock in the morning, you're just, sleeping. It was just complete. Whereas if it had been, that I was there, because I go there, with some regularity, not lately, but, I go a few days ahead of time so I could time adjust, and then I'm awake and I'm more on their time. So it was really kind of a disaster. Even some of my friends who are Nepali understood that I was not speaking proper English. It was really pretty bad.
And I think that's true of so many of us. I've experimented with trying to, in presentations, tape my presentation so that it could be played at a different time. And it just, I find myself trying to be a perfectionist in recording it, as opposed to being genuine and present. And
yeah. And part of it is, they, for the keynotes especially, they want you to be there to answer questions. Well, if you recorded ahead of time, I'm sure they would have played it, but I didn't even think of that. In retrospect, it would have been better than what I did, but, live and learn.
Again, I think we're all in the process of trying to figure this out, and Zoom is not going away.
Yeah.
Even after all this time, even as we hope to be in relationship with each other face to face and in person, I run a class on Indigenous people. So once a month, we bring in an Indigenous speaker. Well, these Indigenous speakers are all over the country, and now, now I can bring them in just on Zoom for an hour, and we don't have a plane, we don't have to get a hotel, they don't have to stay here. They don't want to change that. People are not want. There are a lot of people who are saying, well, let's keep it on Zoom, and then the people who are attending are all over the country. And so how do we change that? People are getting used to, oh, I can get on Zoom now and watch this really interesting presentation. Well, and that's true.
And universities and companies and agencies are way used to saving money this way too. So I don't think it's going to go away at all.
So again, there's a positive, but I think I come back to this idea that we have to be aware of the effect it's having on us and make intentional choices, set boundaries where we need to, so that we take care of ourselves and we're aware of it's an impact on us psychologically and socially. I still feel like, I want to go and visit those people I care about and spend time with them, even though I'm able to see them, once a week on Zoom or call, talk to them. It just doesn't meet the same need for me. And I don't know about other folks. You're going to have to find out what works for you and what meets needs for you, and where the holes are that are new now in how you're dealing with yourself and the world.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, please.
Hi, my name is Terry. I happen to be a professor in the past days in the field of TV production and media and that sort of thing. I just thought I'd add a couple things here. One of the things I worked in was distance education, which Iowa had the most extensive one in the world and still does in fiber optics. They started doing that 25, 30 years ago. And what we found in the research is that it's easy to compare in-person versus Zoom. That's an easy comparison, but maybe perhaps we could look at it in the way of comparing what we have with Zoom versus without Zoom. And also, it's better for the environment. It does bring us together with people we wouldn't otherwise have. I have met so many people all over the world, even through these Zoom rooms in all kinds of groups. I've never seen so many choices for so many people in the world to be able to connect in with the world in our global society. I've used this time after my initial shock and surprise, like everybody had, to really look internally inside of myself. And I found a lot of things about myself that I had kind of neglected in the past. I've taken a very spiritual path during this time period. And I think to turn this discussion around a little bit more to the positive and look toward the future, that we can look at this amazing technology that it's basically provided free for everybody all over the place. This is the biggest connection network that's ever been done in America. It brings in school kids. It brings in experts like you're talking about from all over the world. It's pretty amazing, actually. And so you can hear from my excitement. I've liked it. I've taken this time of reflection, and we are strong people, and we can turn this thing around, and it's a change of attitude.
I'm closer with members of my family that I have been in decades. Weekly Dungeons and Dragons. My 80-year-old aunt is keeping up, I think. Yeah, I get the positivity. I'm kind of wondering, is there like there's people out there that can't afford the Zoom equipment, maybe?
Oh yeah, if you look at the world map of who has access and who doesn't, it's certainly people who are economically less capable.
A little worried about that. About that.
But I don't think that everything that's going on with COVID and it's at this time is bad. But I do think we have to be aware of its impact on us. I have found that, you know, the classes that I'm doing, and I'm reaching people all over the, you know, country and well, in Canada, that it's just amazing. I mean, that's not something I would ever have even thought to do. You know, we did a national concert to support the right to vote here in Florida, you know, and try to get people contacted before the last election. I mean, there's so many wonderful things that I don't think we need to go back on. But I also am aware that we have to just be aware of those impacts. Embrace what works and make choices about what works for us, and also aware of what doesn't work. So I'm going to move away from Zoom for just a moment and bring up a couple more things, and then I'm going to let you all ask some questions or make some comments. But I want to talk about a few other things. So watching CNN the other day, I think it was, and they brought up this self-defense class. I'm going to let you guess who was in the self-defense class. Who do you think was in the self? It was all one type of person.
Women.
Well, it was women, but okay, well, no, it wasn't all women.
Oh.
No, but who was it?
People of color.
No, it wasn't people of color.
Trump voters.
No, no. It was flight attendants. It was all flight attendants.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they have to deal with Trump voters.
I'm not even going to go down that path.
It's
But-
after hours, I could say that.
Okay, it's after hours. So, you know, there are people in our world right now who are feeling some of the negative effects. Waiters and waitresses, they are some of the most scared people, most anxious people right now because they're putting themselves in harm's way, and they have no control. So, you know, I think we have to begin thinking about that. I mean, certainly paying more to people who have to put themselves in harm's way is helpful. I think I'm fully supporting of a $15 minimum wage, all that, but that doesn't take away from the risk that they're putting themselves in. And again, that's one of the other things we have to look at. The changes that are going on right now are not just affecting our personal lives, but are affecting whole groups of people as change happens. And how do we, as a culture, as a country, or as a community, how do we help those who are at risk right now? What can we do? And I want to say that one of the things that is happening is that there are a number of people who are going out of their way to be kind. Now, I don't know if you've seen this, but there are a number of people out there who are stepping up more and more when situations happen that are confrontational, or when somebody is ill or struggling. If you think about the people the nurses, I can think of this one image that I keep seeing, is nurses in a window talking to the family who are down on the grounds outside while their loved one is dying of COVID. And they're constantly at the window telling the family how the patient is doing and giving him their love. I mean, there are a lot of people in this situation right now who have decided to take a different attitude, to take a different focus, to try to be that extra kind, to be the people that they want the world to be. And I'm seeing them more and more and more. I mean, I've certainly seen the negative side too, of, you know, having to tape someone up on an airplane so that they won't hurt anybody else. But there are more people who are stepping up to help those who are struggling or in having a problem. I mean, we're seeing the extremes. You know, we're seeing those who are there on January 6th, and we're seeing those who stepped up and tried to help others, and who continue to do that, and are trying to live their lives in that way. It's a way of coping with a world that feels out of control. Has anybody seen that in their lives? people who stepped up, who are making that extra effort, in this difficult time.
I feel like I have and do, but as far as your first comment, my perception is that really when it comes down to it, there's just some segment of the population that always looks down on service workers. And, I've lived abroad in many places too. It's even worse in a caste society like South Asia, the way people look down, because there you have, your last name tells you where you fit into this hierarchy. So I kind of wonder if that's just not some aspect of our worst nature, and perhaps it's gotten worse with those kinds of people who are like that because of the stresses that we're all under in COVID. So I don't think that's new. The condescension that we see, I don't think it's new. I think it's perhaps worse. But I also agree with the other half. I regularly started tipping 20 and 25% when I go out to eat. I never used to do that. So I just think
Yeah, me too.
poor people have to deal with all kinds of stuff,
I am doing the same thing. I'm doing exactly the same thing, and I've never done it before.
Yeah.
It occurred to me, as we were starting to come out of COVID, that all these people were having, and I would give 10% maybe, but now, 20%. These people are really putting themselves at risk. And they really deserve our positive attention. So thank you for sharing that. I'd forgotten that. I had begun doing that as well. Anybody else notice anything, something positive that you've seen other people step up in a positive way, or you have stepped up in some positive way as we've been going through this process? Something that you've intentionally decided to do.
This is Cynthia. Actually, it's not me, but somebody else, somebody in my previous job who was going through a lot herself, lost a husband and a beloved pet, but she was bringing all kinds of treats to us and to other people through COVID, just saying, here, you deserve this. We know you're still working. And I think it was nice for us, but I think it also helped her that she was able to do something for others as she was going through her losses.
I have a member of my congregation who bought a giant unicorn costume and has been going around to people's houses and, as you said, unicorning them, to brighten their day. And there's nothing rational or anything about that. But she just wanted people to know that, they're cared about, and it's, they can laugh and feel good. And even though they can't touch each other, she can hug them through the costume, and it's a big blow up thing.
Also,
That could also be a good defense.
Hold on just a second. Go ahead. Ray, why don't you go first, and then, okay.
Also, the people coming out on their balconies and applauding. It was 7 o'clock at night. I don't remember exactly where that was, and honoring the workers. And some of the insights I've gotten. That is a commercial that I'd like to recommend. The new show that the New York Times has on radio called The Daily. I've become addicted to it. And it's called The Daily, and it's only a half-hour show. In fact, it's not even a half hour. It's 6 minutes of news, so it's like 24 minutes. But in that short time, they go into some very deep stuff. And there was an interview of an author of a book called Dirty Work. And it's about the people who are doing jobs that nobody else would do. And it's also about this. And then there was a commentary of a waitress who was very articulate in saying also how people are demanding that she pull down her mask before they tip her, which I thought was sort of interesting. Yeah. And including one guy who gave her a $25 tip, and then asked her to pull down the mask. And he said, I just want to see if the rest of your face is pretty to your eyes, something like that. And she was a little she didn't go for it right away. And he said, well, you know, it's either that I look at your face or I look at your breasts. Now, that's just a little indication of some of the treatment that a lot of these people have been getting and doing this kind of work. So there is
I think they're getting,
still people who are doing it who are very outgoing and caring in spite of all this kind of treatment, which was really remarkable, I think. Anyway, that's it.
okay, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.